أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum. I decided to stand up because after lunch it's not easy to speak while I'm sitting. So I can even, keep a watch and see if nobody sleeps. I'd like to begin with a positive note of hope. When I see such a gathering organized by the youth of the community, and this gives us hope as far as the future of Shia Islam is concerned in North America. When you hear the poetry which comes from the hearts of the youth, and then you hear, a speaker like Brother Asad Jaffer here is also a representation of youth in this part of the world. This gives us hope, especially when you talk about poetry. This is where you see the translation is taking place gradually. The forefathers came from their own land with their own languages and cultures. But then the youths who are born, raised here gradually, they start not only speaking in English, they also dream in English. And when you dream in English, you are able to then probably express your feelings and emotions in poetry form. And that is what needs to take place in order to bring the adab Sayyid al-Shuhada on that level. You can't have translations of Marsiya and Nohaj. It has to come, naturally. And that will only come when the ideas in your minds and the emotions in your hearts are all in line with the values of Islam, of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. The discussion or the topic given to me is basically the issue of unity among the Shias in general, in especially keeping New Jersey in mind. Let me just start with the Quran and the history of the Prophet. And from that we can look at how we move forward. If you look at Islam, Islam is not a religion of individuals. It is not a religion of persons as such. It is actually a religion of a community. It's not an individual religion, it's a communal faith. And this is reflected in different ways. The emphasis which is there on the daily Jama'at prayers is one way of enforcing that collectiveness that we see on neighborhood level. Then you see the importance given to private prayers. A very large group, not your own neighborhood, various neighborhoods in that area are put together under the umbrella of what we might call Jama Masjid. And then you see when it comes to the issue of Namaz Eid, the recommendations that you see in the books, although we have not been able to do it exactly in the same way in this part of the world, is that you do Namaz Eid outside in an open place. So a place which can accommodate the entire city. So these are just some of the ways by which Islam would like to enforce this concept of community, through the rituals that we do. And then on a global level, when you look at Hajj, that is also, Hajj could have been done. The legislation could have been there in Islam that anyone who is financially capable and physically able to travel, he should go once in his or her lifetime, whenever they want. But they were not given this option of whenever they want. Hajj was fixed in the month of Dhul Hijjah. And the reason is that so that at the same time you have, millions of people from different parts of the world getting together in Mecca, in Arafat, and Mina, in order to enforce this concept of Ummah and the concept of Islamic community among the followers of Islam. So Islam is not a religion of individuals, it is a religion of a community. And this is also reflected by the famous ayat that many of us remember by heart, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, that believers verily they are brethren of one another. And the word brethren here is a generic term, it's not based on gender. You can say brotherhood or sisterhood, it's all the same actually. And when you look at this issue, there is no difference between a tribe or a race or a language, a culture, or the color of the person. Everyone is included in that community of the Iman and believers. In the same ayah, in Surah Hujurat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this concept of brotherhood, in the same surah actually, another ayah where He says that I created you all from a man and a woman, Adam and Eve. So all of you are children of Adam. Understand that, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I wanted to see variety. Didn't want everyone to be same. And therefore He says, and I made you into shu'ub and qaba'il, different nations and tribes. لِتَعَارَفُوا. So it becomes easier for you to, know and recognize one another. Otherwise, as far as the standard of honor and respect in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is concerned, a person who is atqakum, the most righteous among you, is the best in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you look at the Quran, you'll see that Quran talks about this concept of Muslims being part of a community, part of the Ummah on a local level as well as on a global level. Let me now go to the issue of, is this slogan of brotherhood? Because unity is really, really based on this concept of ukhuwa and brotherhood. Is this slogan of brotherhood just a, slogan? Or did the Prophet of Islam take some practical steps in order to enforce that? Or to give us an example? And this is where we have to divide the life of the Prophet in two areas, Makki and Madani, stages of life. In Mecca, the Prophet was really not in a position to do anything. The most he could do was present the faith to the people, and certain individuals accepted it. But when it came to the issue of forming a community and a society, this was not possible when he was in Mecca. This only became possible when he migrated to Medina. And let us see what he did in Medina. The very first thing is establishing a physical space where people could come together, the masjid. The first major action of the Prophet after Hijrah was the establishment of the masjid, which is known as Masjid al-Narima. But after that, what did he do? And this is what I would say, that looking at our example of the Shia community and its growth in North America, the example of the fathers or grandfathers or grandparents who moved from their own homeland to America, they were actually going through that first phase of trying to put themselves in a place where they can start building a community. And the first step was, having the centers, Masajid, Husainiyas, Imam Bargas. It's a very natural growth as far as migration of the religious community is concerned, especially in the Shia history. But then we have to see, where do we move forward from there? MashaAllah, you look at North America, every major city has not only one Imam Bargaw Masjid, they have, mashallah, in some places even more than the requirement. So as far as centers and buildings are concerned, we have already crossed that stage. As far as building a community is concerned, to have that structure. The physical building is already there. But what is the second stage? As far as the community is concerned, where you can nurture this concept of ukhuwa and brotherhood. Because unity cannot just be a slogan. You really have to do some practical things in order to foster that sense of brotherhood and belonging to a community. And this is where we see Rasulullah looked at this society in Medina, and very soon he realized that the Muslims in Medina are actually divided into two groups as far as their economic status is concerned. You have the Ansar, the majority, the people who were inhabitants of Medina from before, the Aus and Khazraj, two tribes, and then you have this minority known as Muhajirin, the immigrants who came mostly from Mecca and other places with Rasulullah or after his hijrah. And he saw the difference. You have the people who have, this is their own home. They are very well established. They have their tribe, their families, their homes, their farms. The Madani the people who are mostly a farming community, compared to the people of Mecca who are mostly traders and merchants. And this Muhajirin had come, most of them had left everything behind. And when you looked at that difference, this is where you see that we cannot leave this issue of brotherhood and unity just as slogans. We have to take, practical steps to enforce that idea and that concept. And what does Rasulullah do? After establishing the masjid, the first thing that he does is he announced a day to be the day of brotherhood. He gathered the Muhajirin and Ansar, the prominent Ansar, and then he announced that I'm going to establish ukhuwat and brotherhood among these two communities. You could have asked him that already we are the followers of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. You don't have to say that to us. We are already brothers of one another. But Rasulullah is saying that no. At this moment, you are just brothers as far as slogans are concerned. I would like to actually escalate this situation. Take this issue of ukhuwa and brotherhood to a higher level, where you have to be committed to one another, where you have to consider the well-being of one another. And this is what he does. He didn't, we have this petition, going around, people are signing it, mashallah, may Allah, include you among those who are the supporters of Imam Hussain alayhi salam for speaking for the Muslims. But in that gathering, Rasulullah didn't say, okay, I want volunteers from Ansar. Who among you is willing to shelter one of the Muhajirin? There was no, petition going around, no application, no volunteer issue there. Rasulullah, of course, this is his perspective of his ilm al-ghaib, knowing the psychology and mentality of individuals. He would call one person from Ansar, ask him to move forward, and then he would call one person from Muhajirin, and then he would say, you two are brothers of one another. There was already ukhuwah. There was already ukhuwah between them before. But by saying that now you two individuals, an Ansar and a Muhajir here, is asking the Ansari that you have to now take care of your Muhajir brother. Because he is an immigrant, or we can even use the term of the current time, he is a refugee. You have, mashallah, everything, he has nothing. So you help him. Because brotherhood is not just a slogan. And that is where we see that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually praised their action in Surah Anfal, ayat number 75, where He says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَهَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. On one hand, you have the group of people who believed in Allah, migrated for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fought in the way of Allah, وَالَّذِينَ آوَوا وَنَصَرُوا. And on the other hand, you have the people who believed in Allah and Rasul. They sheltered these people and they helped them. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. These are the true believers. لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ. They shall have forgiveness and a noble sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, on a practical level, Rasulullah would call one from the Ansar, one from Muhajir, and establish this more closer ties of brotherhood between one another. And that's, where we see that when we talk about the issue of, the second phase of our existence here, and that is the task that you, the new generation, have to take on your shoulders. The immigrants did, the Muhajirin, they did whatever they could to establish, erect the buildings for you, where you can have the space where you can gather now. The task is now yours, as the next generation, to foster that spirit of ukhuwah and brotherhood. You actually suited to do that even better than the Muhajirin, because they had differences as far as, the issue of color, language, culture, ethnicity. And we are not saying those are bad things. You should not have your culture, not maintain your language. No, if you are, why not? You have Americans who speak Spanish also. We have Canadians who also learn, French. Why can't you have a Shia American who speaks English, of course, whether he wants to know or not, but he also knows Urdu, for example, or Farsi, or Urdu, depending, or Arabic, depending on the language of their own ancestral, homeland. There's nothing wrong in it. But you have to now move beyond that. You can have your centers on the line of culture and language and ethnicity, but now you have to build the bridges there. And the bridges have to be built when it comes to what we call social political issues. Because when you look at the Shia community, the issues that we face as a community, issues that you face as, youths, for example, there's no difference between the issues that other Shia communities of other ethnic backgrounds face. And that is where you see that, there are things we can do on a ritual level, in our own languages, in our own cultural ways. There is nothing wrong in that. But there are issues that we can work on it on a broader level. And that is where the ukhuwah and brotherhood has to really reflect as far as the teachings and the seerah of the Prophet is concerned. Salawat. Referring to this example of, brotherhood established by the Prophet in Medina between Ansar and Muhajirin, the famous ayat of Quran, everybody recites about unity. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تُفَرِّقُوا. Hold on together to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not be divided. If you look at this ayat, this actually came in the context of establishment of brotherhood by Rasulullah in Medina. Because the next ayat sentence says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. He says, hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not be divided. Remember the blessings of Allah on you. There was a time when you were enemies of one another. But Allah, because of His blessing, brought your hearts closer to one another. And you became ikhwan and brother in faith. And so when we talk about unity, we have to realize that it is a reflection of the spirit of brotherhood. We cannot just talk about unity in isolation. Unity is actually end result of fostering the sense of ukhuwah and brotherhood among the members of the community. And that actually depends on getting together in order to help one another in social, political issues. Salawat. From the Shia perspective, of course, I can't miss this segment of that story of ukhuwah. When Rasulullah brought all the muhajirin into the relationship of ukhuwah with the Ansar, there was one muhajir left at the end. And he comes to Rasulullah and he complains. He says, Ya Rasulullah, what happened? What is my fault here? I've been left alone. And that is where Rasulullah says to him, Ya Ali, anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. You are my brother in this dunya as well as in the akhirah. There is a problem there. Rasulullah was establishing ukhuwah, brotherhood between Muhajirin and Ansar. Because Ansar were already established in their own homes. Muhajirin were in difficult, financial, economic circumstances. Ali was a Muhajir. Rasulullah was a Muhajir. Rasulullah himself was in difficult circumstances those days. Ali was there in difficult circumstances. But maybe Rasulullah sees this moment, like he did it many, many times. That's just to show the difference in the standard of Ummah and Al. Don't compare them on the same level. The standard of Al Muhammad is different from the standard of Ummah Muhammad. We are followers of Ali. And the basis of our belief is the wilayah. We are taught in madrasa the concept of tawalla. What is that? In this theme that we are discussing, the problem is we know tawalla only halfway. We are told that tawalla means to love Muhammad and Al Muhammad. But there is something even beside that. We do not only have to love Muhammad and Al Muhammad, the demands of tawalla is that we should also love those who love Muhammad and Al Muhammad. So even the concept of wilayat of Ahlul Bayt, in that sense of love, is not just an individual's perspective, link of that person to Muhammad and Al Muhammad. It is actually a relationship being established between him with Muhammad and Al Muhammad and the community which loves Muhammad and Al Muhammad. So we cannot isolate ourselves. We are part of that community of those who follow Muhammad and Al Muhammad. And that is its own demands, as I said, that just brotherhood by itself cannot just be a slogan. Concern for the well-being of one another is very essential in order to live up to that concept of wilayat and the demand that Allah has upon us. Just one hadith here. Don't want to take that much time. We'll give some time to question and answer at the end. There is a very beautiful narration by Sheikh Saduq. He actually has a very simple booklet, I would say, by the title of Sifat Shia. And from what I can remember, even the translation of that is available. He has compiled the ahadith of the Imams, where they describe the qualities of the Shias. What are the qualities which should be found among the Shias? And in one, this is a very interesting conversation, Muhammad bin Ajlan says that I was in the blessed presence of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wa salam. فدخل رجل فسلم عليه. A person came in, greeted the Imam, and by the context of the conversation between the Imam and that person, it is obvious that this was a traveler who had come from some other city. And Imam asked him, كيف من خلفت من إخواني? What is the situation of your brethren in faith in the place that you have left? You know, how is the community doing there? فأحسن الثناء وزكى وأطرى. And this place, and this person said, yeah, mashallah, they do this, you know, praise the community. And then Imam asked him a question. Tell me, كيف عيادة أغنيائهم لفقرائهم? Tell me, do the affluent members of the community go to visit the poor ones when they are not feeling well? Do they do their ayadat or not? He says very few of us do that. The Imam asked him, كيف مواصلة أغنيائهم لفقرائهم في ذات أيديهم? What about financial help of the affluent people towards the poor and the needy in their community around them? And this person says, oh Imam, you are talking about qualities and attributes that I don't see among our people. You know, you're asking me all these questions about a community. You know, I don't see those things in the Shia community that I come from. And that is where the Imam says, فَكَيْفَ يَضَعَمُ هَؤُلَاءِ أَنَّهُمْ لَنَا شِيعًا. What right do these people have to assume that they are our Shia? They believe in one God, they believe in the Prophet as the last Prophet, they believe in the Quran, they believe in the vilayat of the Imams, they believe in the sixth Imam as their present Imam. But our Imam says that they don't have a right to assume that they are our Shias. He's not talking about this issue on a theological level. He's talking about the demands of being a Shia of Ali Muhammad. You cannot be away from the concern and the well-being of the fellow Shia community. And this is where we realize that when we talk about these issues, you know, this is part of being a Shia of Ali. And so we as a community have, you know, reached to a point where the buildings are there. Building a building is easy, building a community is not that easy. We have the structures. We have to now work on building a community. And building a community means to work for the well-being and betterment of one another as a community. And if you have that as a focus and a mission, you know, as Shias who have grown up in this part of the world, you know, inshallah, you'll be able to carry on the torch further. You know, the parents and the grandparents came and did whatever they could do, according to their understanding, their commitment, their resources, and their hard work. But this is not the end of the story. We have to move forward in building communities. You know, you already heard some of the examples from our brother Asad Jafri here. Let me just emphasize on that point further, that you can still have your own masajid, your Hussainiyas, your Imam Bargas, do your things in your own languages, no problem at all. But then, look for ways of having a larger gathering of the Shias of New Jersey. Maybe after the event of Ghadir, on the weekend after that. Or when we talk about, you know, the 2 weeks between 15 Sha'ban and the month of Ramadan, have a special celebration for the birth anniversary of the Imam of the time, which is done in a place where various Shia communities of different ethnic backgrounds can gather together. At least that will form a beginning of that networking, familiarity with one another. And there probably you will see the strength that exists in the Shia community in this region. And that is where you will be then able to think and plan about other issues, where you can work about common issues that every Shia community faces in this city or this state or this part of the world. And so it's the matter of looking at it from that perspective. Let me end, even Karbala for us as an example for that. One of the distinctions of Shia madhab is that this is a madhab which doesn't discriminate along the lines of tribe, nationality, ethnicity, color, language, or culture. This was the reason why the people who were from the non-Arabic background during the days of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who were known as Mawali, they were pulled towards him, attracted to him and his descendants, the Imams who came from Amir al-Mu'mineen, because they saw how they were treated by Ali Muhammad, very different from the treatment they got from the others. The treatment of equal respect to anyone who was a follower of the Islamic faith. And you see that reflected even in Karbala. Look at the background of the Shuhada of Karbala. They were not only from Hashimi background, they were Hashimi and non-Hashimi. They were not all from the Arab background, they were Arabs and Ajam among them, non-Arabs. Not all of them were affluent and rich. There were rich people as well as poor among them. There were masters as well as slaves there. There were white people as well as dark-skinned people. You see the example of John. And I think for us, let me end with that example of how to, link ourselves to the Ahlul Bayt with a spirit of sacrifice, which is an extension of the spirit of brotherhood. So when Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he comes to Imam and asks for permission, Imam refused. He said, John, you have served me, my brother, my father before him. So many years. He was actually a slave of Abu Zar al-Ghafari. Again, a point for us to remember. Abu Zar al-Ghafari did not keep the vilayat of Ahlul Bayt limited to himself. He extended it to others who were around, including his own slaves. This madhab is not only for ourselves that we keep it inside and hide it from others. Wherever we are, whatever influence we have on others, to that extent, share this Islam of Muhammad and the tashayyu of Ali with others also. And after the passing away of Abu Zar, John himself, by his own will, attached himself to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, I'd like to stay with you, serve. And after Ali, he was with Imam Hassan. After Hassan, he was with Imam Hussain. He became so close to the family that when Imam traveled from Medina to Mecca and Mecca to Karbala, John was with them. And on that day when he wanted to go and fight for the cause of Imam Hussain, Imam says, John, you have served my family for so long. You become old. I don't want you to suffer the way we are going to suffer. But John insisted. And look at the words. He realized the psychology of Imam. He knew that if I use this line of thought, Imam will not refuse. And he says, Hussein, I know. I am a dark-skinned person. I don't come from a noble family like yours. But I will not be satisfied till my blood joins your blood in the way of my blood. Knowing the psychology of Imam, the way Imam thought, he knew that Imam will not refuse. And that is where he says, yes, I know. My body has a smell. My face is not bright as yours. And that is where Imam allows him. And it seems those words of John were still ringing in the ears of the Imam when he came to the body of John, where he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma bayyiz wajhu. Allah gave grace and nur to the face of John. Allah gave fragments to the body of John. And Allah raised him with my grandfather on the day of judgment. So remember that example. That when we talk about unity, it's not just a slogan. There are practical steps that we have to take according to the demands of our own situation and time. And we have the seerah of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt to support us on this issue. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.